been with my husband for 15 years. We've been married for 10 years. And we just have we've built this extraordinary life for the two of us. And, if I'm really honest, he is my muse. He's my inspiration. He's my teacher. And he's really taught me so much about what it looks like to what unconditional love looks like, and how fun and playful marriage can be even after many years together. And so I draw a lot of the work that I teach and the lessons and the distinctions I go through with my clients. A lot of it is from my own life. And I think what is so valuable about what I teach is a lot of it is counterintuitive. And so it's teaching people how to do the opposite of what they've been doing. I use this phrase: if you've been zigging, I'm going to teach you how to zag. And that's what you got to do, right? Because if it's not working, you got to do something else. I've been coaching for I've had my own business for about 3 years, but I've been coaching for about 10. And I've been in the self-development arena, really focusing on elevating my how I show up in the world for about 20 years.
Great.
And it really started actually when I was going through my divorce with my first husband. Mm-hmm. And really discovering, like, what is it about me that attracts these kind of people into my life? Because it was like the liar, the ones that my parents never approved of, the ones that would cheat, and just didn't treat me right. And I knew that there was something within myself that I wasn't getting responsible for, that I was maybe incomplete about. Mm-hmm. And, I went into the Landmark Forum with him and being like, okay, we need to fix you. Because you're broken. You know what I'm saying? Yes. And then about halfway through, when we start talking about taking responsibility, and I'm like, what? I'm responsible for this shit show? And I broke down in tears. I was like, no, this can't be right. And by the end of the weekend, I was able to look at my husband, who, we've been fighting. We had been barely like touching each other, to just say to him, listen, I am so sorry. I've been a jerk to you. I've treated you badly. I've judged you. I've been trying to make you into someone that you're clearly not. And I'm sorry. And I'm sorry for behaving so badly. And, you're great the way you are. You're perfect. It just doesn't work for me and what I want for my life. And the miracle of this all is that we got to go to the courts. We went to the law courts together. We signed the papers side by side. We had no lawyers. I think we spent a total of $80 to complete our relationship. We went out for dinner, and he dropped me off after dinner, and I gave him a kiss on the cheek, and I said, thank you and good luck. And that was it. That was the end of it. And so for me, that was quite the breakthrough, if you will, or the triumph of that story, because it was not going to go that way. It was a very, very angry and bitter, and just, I had it like he duped me. Like he represented himself when we were engaged as a certain kind of man and wanted the certain kind of things. Mm-hmm. And then after we got married, it was like, surprise, that's not what I'm committed to. And I felt betrayed. And so I was very angry. And inside that weekend, what I actually got present to was that all of how I'd been showing up pointed to an event that happened when I was 9.
Oh, wow. And
when I was 9, my parents, they were married for 25 years before my dad passed away. We were talking about this a little earlier today. And I remember there was these weird phone calls coming through our house. And then one day my mom called us into the living room and said, it was me, my sister, who was 6, and my brother, who was 3. And she brought us into the living room and she said, guys, Dad's leaving. He doesn't love us anymore. And he left. And I remember being 9 years old, standing at that window, waiting for someone to go, ha ha, joke, didn't happen, obviously. But I remember just waiting for him to turn around and waiting for this bad dream to end. And he just kept walking and stepped into a car that I didn't recognize. And I remember standing there and like tears, coming down my face and thinking, my dad doesn't love me. And I can't trust anybody, because this is what happens when you trust people. And all, people I love will leave me. And I could see that, there I was at, 20, I guess I was about 26 when I was in my forum, and looking back, I'm like, oh, that's why I feel unworthy. That's why I am attracted to men that I know are going to leave eventually. Mm-hmm. And it was just such an eye-opening experience. And even till now, here I am, it's been about 20 years since I've done my forum, still discovering things about that moment, about myself, even till today, that I'm like, it's like, it's like peeling the onion. It feels like just when you get to the core, you're like, oh no, there's more. but it just, that experience and that sort of disruption of what I thought I knew about myself and life totally, challenged. And what was worse, so going back to my dad, what you don't know is that my dad had an affair with my mom's best friend who lived in our basement for quite a while, got her pregnant, and she encouraged him to be with her. So I have a half brother. And so when my dad passed away 20 years ago, that was actually the first day I met my half brother. She showed up at my dad's funeral and was like, "Hi, I'm your brother." And I think if it was any other time in life, the reaction would have been differently. But because it was in that moment, what there was just love and like, yay, we're together again. And the crazy thing about it is he looks exactly carbon copy of my father, like face. Oh, wow. It's quite freaky. It has been so incredible because now I know, standing over where I am, that no matter what it is you've gone through in life, that you can always rise above. You can always come out on the other end. I feel like too many people use the hardships and the challenges of life to behave in a certain way where they don't feel like they don't have to be responsible. It's kind of like, well, my dad left me when I was young, so this is why I'm a jerk, so deal with it. Really, really. And what's so beautiful too is that I have this incredible relationship with my half brother, which people are like, what? You have a relationship with a kid who broke up your family? It's like, but he didn't do anything. He was the product of something, but he did not do anything bad. So my mom actually has a fantastic relationship with him. He doesn't call her, mom, but he calls her auntie, and she's like, "Hey, did you eat?" And he's always welcome over. And he's just the most extraordinary human being. But what's even on the other side of what's even more miraculous is that, so after about 4 years, my dad was away. He got sick and he was put on a transplant list. And because he was on a transplant list, he couldn't work. So his girlfriend kicked him out. And so he comes back to my mom. And, this whole time, I remember one of the memories that I still have of that time in my life was my mom on her knees at church praying like every single day. And so this time came when my dad came back and said, "Listen, I'm sick. I need someone to take care of me. Will you take care of me? Will you take me back?" And my mom said, "Yes, absolutely." Wow. And she said, "The only condition is that we never speak of this again. Like we are closing this chapter of our life, and you never go back. If you're with us, you're with us." And he said, "Deal." And he honored his deal until he passed away. So it was about 13 years after when he got the transplant, and then he lived for another 13 years, and then he passed away. And what was so beautiful about that was because he had that second chance, he took advantage. He used to never go to church. He started to go to church every single day. He started to show up as the best father. He started to really show up as the best husband. And that last 13 years was incredible. And so when he passed away, it was so complete. At least at that time, it felt like it was complete. Now, obviously, between times, things are still coming up for me, right? Thinking, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm complete with that." It's like, "Oh no, I'm not." But yeah, it was just this, when I tell the story, people are like, "Holy crap, like your mom just said yes and just took him back, and then you guys went back to being like as though nothing happened." I'm like, yeah, like, and this is, I think, one of the things I say to my clients is that when you are committed to something, you're going to do whatever it takes, and you have to be willing to set aside all of those fears of like, "Oh, why if he does it again?" or all those things that show up for us when we've been hurt. But yet, if we can actually have faith and do the work on ourselves as well as the relationship, they can still have the extraordinary marriage of their dreams. Yes. So I love sharing that because I think that there's not a lot of stories like that.
Yeah, I told you we were going to talk about love, guys. And Janelle's bringing that love conversation to the forefront. So it's Absolutely. Got to be love, and having that covenant and saying yes. And she honored her vows through the very end, until death do us part. That is a beautiful love story. So Janelle, thank you so much for sharing that. And Dave.
So redeeming love, right, is the words I come up with when I think about it. And I'm so happy that you shared the story the way that you did, Janelle, because what I'm picking up out of this is there's always a chance, right? If I was to put a theme to everything you just said, there's always a chance to change it. And no matter what you've been through, no matter how hard it may have been, no matter how impossible it may seem, you never lose hope, because there's a chance for that redeeming grace to come back But also what I pick up on is also uncommon, by the way. You talk about how the story is uncommon, but the ability to be able to see past it to the next stage and to recognize that only through challenging a person, our own internal demons, so to speak, and actually facing them head on a regular basis and realizing that those things are never going to end, can we actually become who we're supposed to be.
I think God taps us on the shoulder at different times in our lives. You know, I think that I think the divorce was definitely a wake-up call for sure, because A, I'm Catholic, B, I'm Filipino, and that's a huge faux pas, right? It's a taboo. And I want to say that that was the moment for me, because it was the moment where Janelle, who is the eldest of three, responsible, good girl, straight A student, people pleaser, yes ma'am, churchgoer, singer, choir, whatever, had to put her foot down and say, no, I am not going to live my life to look good for other people. Because I could have kept going in this relationship. Like I could have made, survived it, but that's not what I wanted. And I had been dreaming, like so many girls, about the kind of man I would marry. And, I'm a very romantic person. And so when I realized that that dream wasn't going to come true, I'm like, screw that. I want what I want. I've been dreaming of this my entire life. And I knew it was possible. I just didn't know how to get there. And so I was willing to do the work. I was willing to look in the mirror. I was willing to see all the things about myself that I didn't like and just confront them head on with God's grace. And, one of the things I really discovered, even just recently, was how much pressure we put on ourselves, the expectations that we put on ourselves, or that our parents or society puts on us. And then going, you know what? I don't have to do that. I can actually be happy going against the grain, doing things that people say I can't do, and just creating new pathways that no one has ever walked before, even though it was scary. And I didn't, there's a huge chance that I would end up screwing myself over and regretting it. But I think regret is one of the biggest fears that I personally have for myself. And so whenever fear, comes up for me, I ask myself, okay, am I going to turn around and go the other way? And am I going to regret it if I turn around the other way? And so there's these moments in life where, God, universe says, Janelle, hello. And then I kind of go, okay, do I go for it? Because this is really scary. But, the payoff on the other side of it is so huge. So for example, my husband is from the opposite side of Canada. So if you guys know where Newfoundland is, he's from St. John's, Newfoundland. We are like 6,000 miles apart. And we met on the phone. So the things that had to, the way the stars had to align for us to somehow find each other on the phone that day and actually say, you know what, we should continue this conversation. And it's kind of inappropriate, but can I ask for your number? Was just, I feel like, again, one of those moments where God was like, hello, Janelle. And I'm like, what? You want me to do what? Okay, all right. This is kind of out of line and you might say no, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So I don't know. I just feel like I've always been guided throughout my life. But I think it really started with my divorce. And then I got the next really big aha when I turned 40. I was sitting on my couch. I was planning a birthday party. I wanted to go home to the Philippines to be with my family. And, one of the concerns I have going back to the Philippines is they make fun of my weight. In the Philippines, I'm overweight. And I'm too dark. I should be white and I should be skinny is kind of how it is. But, I kind of sat there on the couch one day and I said, here I am coming up to pretty much the halfway point in my life. And the first half of my life has been extraordinary. I've met the Queen. I've sang for Maya Angelou. I've done some I've hit some really huge income goals and I've won awards, all that. But I thought to myself, if I were to die right now and I got to the pearly gates of heaven and St. Peter looks at me and says, what did you do with your life? There wasn't anything that I could pinpoint that I was super, super proud of other than the egocentric accomplishments. But really, I was like, where have I really given myself over to something that is worthy of my life? And I realized I hadn't done that yet. I realized up until then, I was working in software, I was making 6 figures, I was winning free trips all around the world. Like I had a really great life and it wasn't enough for me. And I felt like how the part of me that was showing up every day was a very, very small part. Like I would say 2% of me was showing up every day. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, if I could rewrite my life, or if I could hit the reset button at 40, how would I want the next 40 years to look like? How would I want to feel? What would I want to be doing? What would the perfect day be like? What kind of life, what kind of marriage do I want? And so I just started to create that. I put myself into another seminar. I hired a trainer and I went on a diet and I lost 25 pounds in like 5 weeks. I went to the Philippines and everybody was like, their jaws were on the floor. Like, holy crap, you look amazing. And I felt really great, not only on the outside, but really in the inside. And that's when I was like, okay, Janelle is starting a new life right now. She's going to do whatever she wants to do. And there's no rules. And I'm going to create something that no one's ever created before. And I just really focused on what if all the love that I could conjure up could be packaged in a way that would be a gift to the world, what would that look like? And so that's how I became a coach. And because I love love, I love my husband. And more importantly, I am, really concerned about the way the world is going, in specifically our children, and what we're teaching our children about relationships, about communication, about patience, about listening, about compassion. That really worries me. And every single client that comes to see me, they got mommy daddy issues. So I'm telling my clients, like, don't do that to your kids. And what kind of role models are you guys being to these children, these little people? They might not understand, or you guys might not be talking about necessarily what's wrong, but energetically, they know something's up. They know the space is not safe. And I think at the end of the day, not only do we need to do that for each other in marriage, but we got to do that for our kids too. And so a lot of couples won't do the work for themselves, but they'll do the work for their children. A lot of us are in denial. Well, I'm fine, everything's fine, right? And just being like, no, things are not fine. And that's okay. It's a good place to start. I feel like usually the first session with my clients is a bumpy one, because we're talking about all the things that aren't working. And oftentimes if someone is complaining about something that they don't like about the other person gets defensive. And and I say to them, like, listen, this is not we're not here to poo-poo on you. We're really here just to like assess if you're looking at a house and this house needs a renovation, we need to go around the whole house and make sure we know everything that's wrong so that we know what we need to do. The other thing I tell my clients right away is, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you have these, especially on communication. It's not your fault that you have these issues. We all have these issues on some level or another. That's what being human is, right? Our ego's in the way, our fears are in the way, our memories are in the way, our bad habits are in the way. There's so much that is against us. And so unless we're willing to do the work to change, to grow, to be uncomfortable, and to look within and go, okay, I'm not perfect, and that's okay. However, there is so much room and opportunity. I have this, one of my favorite sayings is, don't be bitter, be better. And I think just owning the fact that we don't feel like we're good enough, that we don't feel like we're smart enough, to admit that. And so I did this with my husband all the time. There are moments when I catch myself and I say to my husband, honey, you know what? I just noticed myself getting triggered right there. And what came up for me was a memory about my dad. And so when you came to hug me and I kind of like got a little bit, that wasn't you, that was me. I love you. You didn't do anything wrong. And so I'm always assuring my partner that the stuff I'm dealing with is mine and has nothing to do with him. And so he doesn't have to get defensive. He doesn't have to worry that our love is on the line. He just needs to know that I'm just dealing with myself, and that's okay. And I do the same thing for him.
Right? You're saying this stuff, and I can just picture people in my mind, right? That I'm fine. Just like you said, right? I don't need to do that, or they just broach over it, or just talk about something else, change the subject, whatever. There's this resistance factor.
Yeah.
So what can we do about that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. growth and change is so uncomfortable, right? I want to talk about change for a second, because this is a question I get all the time. I want to change, but how? Where do I even begin? And I tell people, yeah, you want to change and you don't know how, and you can't, because every time you try, it's like you have a dance routine, okay? And you've been doing the same song and dance for 20 years, and now you're going, okay, I need to make up a new routine. Right? But because all you know is that one routine, that's all you're going to keep doing until you say, okay, I need to hire a new dance coach who's going to teach me a whole new choreograph and teach me steps that I don't know. And, even maybe get me out of my comfort zone and actually level up my dance skills. you're going to just keep spinning your wheels and keep feeling like you're not getting anywhere. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions and frustrations for couples. And they go, well, my husband said he was going to change, but I haven't seen any change, therefore he's not. It's like, no, he probably does want to change. He just has no idea how, because his behavior pattern has been this way for so long. And so who I say I am for these couples is an interruption and a disruption to the mediocrity of their thoughts.
Thinking back to the incident when you're 9 years old, which is pretty traumatic. I had my kids in my mind as you told that story, and it broke my heart to hear it. But then also the divorce situation, all that stuff, right? How long did it take you to get to where you are today? How much work did you really have to do to move through all that stuff to get to a point of healing in your life? Was it an overnight? Did it happen?
How old am I? It is still today. I still do the work every single day. I probably do it 20 times a day. And so it's what I say to my clients. I'm like, I'm no different from you. I still have my shutdowns. I have my defense mechanisms. I have moments that I'm a jerk. The only difference is that I'm able to catch myself faster and I'm able to get out of it quicker. That's the only difference. I just have more tools.
And a willingness to learn from it, right? And grow from that.
Yeah. And I think one of the two biggest things that I have learned this year for myself is surrender.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. And compassion for myself, compassion, forgiveness. And I think forgiveness is such a topic that we don't talk about enough. I think it's something that couples don't understand, or even just people in general understand. Why is forgiveness so important? And so I actually have a daily ritual that I do where I sit down and I go, what do I need to forgive myself for today? I think that there is a concept around forgiveness that people don't understand. I think there's so many there's so many facets of forgiveness, but I think the one that people forget is that forgiveness isn't for the other person. Forgiveness is for yourself. You don't need to ask, the other person doesn't need to ask for forgiveness. They don't need to apologize for you to forgive them.
Right.
Because it's not for them. It is for you, so that you can break free from the prison of this emotional heaviness that you've been carrying, that the other person probably doesn't even realize that they've been impacting on you. But it's up to you to let go of that. No one can do that for you. You know, the other person can say, I'm sorry a bazillion times. And that doesn't necessarily impact your feeling of actually forgiving that person. That is an inside job. And it's a tough inside job because we get so confused with that old paradigm or that old story of what forgiveness is.
Yes.
So, and then the other side of it is, being in that uncomfortable place doesn't feel good. And we try to ignore it and avoid it and deny it, rather than actually leaning into it and going, okay, what's this actually about? So I think, courage is such a huge component of forgiveness and compassion.
Yes. I believe that you would be a great person for somebody to reach out to get help with moving forward with these things. You definitely have a lot to share, and I love your passion. And certainly, it's like, I remember those old things where they say, well, I forget how the commercial goes, but I think it was like the hair thing or whatever. And it would say, well, I'm also a client, right? You have lived it. You're not just doing it, right? You have actually lived through it. And a lot of times, honestly, with life coaches, I'm a coach as well. We get that whole thing of like, well, life coaches haven't really, they're still dealing with stuff themselves, and yet they want to help me. Well, that's not something that they can say to you, right? You have lived through it. You've been doing the work. And so you have the evaluated experience to come along with what you're doing as a coach. And that makes you extremely powerful, right? Because now you can help people heal and go through their transformation and their journey as well. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and how potential clients can actually reach out to you and start their journey as well.
Yeah, well, one thing I do really unique is I actually created a hybrid program for my clients. And what I mean by that is that when they come to me about whatever they're dealing with, something around the relationship, usually around communication, connection, trust, intimacy, those are the kind of the four, and infidelity kind of falls in there too. But my strategy is, listen, let's work on you first. Let's put the relationship aside for a second. Tell me, what do you need for you to be happy? Because what I discovered is that, they come to me going, we're disconnected. We don't have any passion in our relationship. But when I talk to them about their life, they're out of shape. They hate their job. They have no fun in their life. They have no self-care. And life is just like, meh. And so for me, I'm like, let's work on you being the best version of you, creating personal goals for you. And then when you can show up the best version of yourself, then you can show up, you can really start to work on your relationship. But if you have so much of the, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, it doesn't even matter what work we do together, because you're going to keep falling back to that. So we need to work on this first. We need to work on your vision for your life. We need to work on your mindset. We need to work on the skill sets that you don't have currently. We need to work on your energy, and we need to create a strategy. So those are the 5 pillars that I kind of move my clients through. But it really starts with that one-on-one time. Because the other thing that I notice is, when couples are not getting along, not listening, there's nothing you can do until those walls come down. And usually those walls will not come down in front of each other. Usually they'll happen in a private session with me, where they can really admit, like, yeah, you know what? I'm afraid my husband's going to leave me. I'm afraid my wife's going to cheat on me. I'm afraid that my kids are going to hate us. I'm afraid that if I forgive him, he'll do it again. A lot of these things, they won't necessarily admit to their partner, in front of their partner at this point, but they will admit it to someone like me, and I really come from a place of, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong, good or bad. We're only here to talk about what is it that you want for yourself and your life and your family. And then we're going to deal with everything that gets in the way of that. We're not going to talk about what happened, whose fault it was, what'd you do, who lied. That doesn't matter anymore. I'm interested in about what is it you want? What is the vision? How do we get there? And how do we get there in less than 90 days? So I one of the things I'm really proud of is I've been able to help couples who have been separated, like literally physically separated for 6 months, and work with them for 30 days and have them come back together in 30 days. My record is 6 days.
Wow.
Nice.
So I know what I do is powerful, and I would say it is coaching, but it's more than that. It's so much more than that. So, but that's in essence what I do is I help them save their families and save their marriage in 90 days or less. It's kind of my promise.
Yeah. So 2 things I'll comment too, just to support what you're saying there, because one thing that coach does, right, for those of you watching, is they hold the vision for their clients, because it's easy to lose track of that. And you may know what I'm talking about, Janelle. The client gets so wrapped up in what they're going to, the specifics, right, that they forget why they're even there with you in the first place. So that's the cool thing about having a coach, is they're responsible and take delight even in holding that vision for you to get you to where you're trying to go. And then I wanted to share a brief story too, Janelle, because many years ago, and this is just a simple thing. My wife and I were arguing over time spent with each other. She felt like I wasn't, or I think she felt like I wasn't spending enough time with her. Right. And I felt like this woman just wants me glued to her hip all the time. Like I'm never going to be able to do anything. All she wants me to do is be next to her. And we worked with somebody at the time, right? We sought counseling, and it was interesting because we got into the conversation, and as that counselor began to ask questions, she asked her something along the lines of, what is it that you expect of Dave here on this issue? What is your real expectation? And she said, I'll never forget, is I wish you would just come home for 10 or 15 minutes, sit down, ask me how my day was, and just listen. And I remember thinking to myself, is that it? Right? And I looked over and I said it out loud, like, seriously, that's it? I've been stirring myself up over all this time over something that I thought was this big, and she was only asking for this much. But because, like Janelle's saying, I wasn't willing to listen, and my wall was up, I wasn't willing to even hear her. But because a third party was involved who wasn't emotionally attached to she or myself, we were able to get somewhere with it, right? And so I think that's the point of what you're bringing up, Janelle, and the power behind some of the work that you do. Seek out that third party, because Janelle wants that vision for both of the clients, right? When in a married couple, you have 2 people, and sometimes it may seem like that vision is different, but one thing that unites them is they want to remain together in love, right? That's the goal. So
yes, and I think that's a really great point. I think I do a free consult for all my clients, because first of all, I don't actually work with everybody. I'm very specific about where a client is in their headspace and in the sort of the phase of their relationship. Because if I come in too early, then we're actually going to be spinning our wheels and not getting anything done. And if I come in too late, where they're already like signing divorce papers, well, then that's not really where I can make a difference, right? But to your point, I think that one of the reasons why I do the clarity call is so that they get actually how aligned they truly are. Because what they're focused on is, here's where we're not aligned. But when we consult, like your question, what is it that you actually want at the end of the day? What they want is to be happy, to be in love again, to have that spark, to have their kids feel safe. Like they want the same things, and they just haven't realized that. Then the other thing I would also say is that when we are in conflict or, you know, in a disagreement, oftentimes both people want to feel heard. But, you know, Dave, if you say you need to listen to me and I'm saying, no, you need to listen to me, guess what? Nobody's listening. So having a third party kind of is like, you know, I sometimes feel like I'm a little bit of like a traffic cop. Like, hold on, stop. Okay, now you can now you can talk. And I just teach them kind of what you were talking, like teaching them how to listen, teaching them how to listen, to not to respond, to react, to justify, but really understand, to or listen, to connect, to empathize, to understand, to really get the other person's world. I feel like as a coach, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I feel like our number one job and the most valuable thing that we can do for our clients is to just have them feel heard.
Yes.
You know, in the beginning, I used to be like, oh my God, I got to have it all figured out. I need to know all the answers. And I was like freaking out about it. And like that very first session, I realized if I can just listen and give them that experience they've never had before. And some of them have even said to me, Janelle, I've never been listened to like that before in my life. Like that was amazing. That is the one gift that we can give our clients.
Yes, indeed. Listening is a powerful tool. It might just be the most powerful tool that any one of us has.
And yet no one knows how to do it. And so
Yes, indeed.
this is my thing. This is why I love what I do and why I think there's such a huge opportunity for me to make such a difference with something that's quite simple.
Growing up in the family, the type of family dynamics that you have, and to know that the dynamics of family is truly there and connected with love as the foundation. Janelle, you're so amazing. And what you do for families, what you do for marriages, couples, and even, do you work with individuals?
I do.
So why do you have the complimentary consultation for the clarity call? Why is it free? Why is it free?
Well, you know what? To be honest, my intention is to serve. And there are people that can't afford a coach. And I feel confident in my skill set that I know that I can make a difference even in a 20-minute phone call. And so whether or not someone wants to hire me or they don't, or they can't afford it or they can, I feel like I'm doing God's work. All I pray about is, Lord, just bring me the people I'm meant to help. But again, like I said, the other thing too is really for me to suss out, like, who are the clients that I work with? I have a 100% success rate. And the reason I have a 100% success rate is because I'm very particular about the kind of people that I work with.
Yes.
They have to be ready. They have to have a growth mindset. They have to be willing to do the work. They have to be willing to be responsible, right? This is not this is not an easy road. And I make sure that the clients who come to me know that they're going to get the results that they want. But this is like getting ready for the Olympics. This is not like, you know, sit and have a drink and like, we'll chit chat. No, this is, I call it an intensive because it is intense.
Yes.
But like I said, you know, the clients that do the work, man, 3-4 weeks in, like everything's completely changed. They're having sex again. They're planning their next vacation. They're moving back in together. They're sleeping in the same, like, it is amazing. And then as their kids start to get involved and excited in creating a structure at home that really works, it's so amazing to see that, you know, from it's like a night and day comparison that I love. And so I offer these free sessions for anyone who just could really use some support and some love and some perspective and some hope.
Yeah. So I think this thought comes to mind. Sometimes when we say do the work, right? I think about the statistic I've heard before: 7 out of 8 people don't even like their jobs, right? And so when we say do the work, our minds start correlating things, and it sounds more like taking from us, more like an expense from us, right? But I want to remind you all, right, that are watching, that doing the work and this is a reframe, and it's an investment in you, right? It's an investment in you. It's an investment in your marriage. It's an investment for your children, and it's an investment for anyone that interacts with you on a daily basis. So take the risk, right? Because I know it's a risk to do that, to invest in you and your future. Because I'm telling you, I know Janelle told her story, but I can also speak from experience that when we do that, it's worth it. It's worth every penny. It's worth every tear, right, that goes into it.
Absolutely.
So,
I think, you know,
Janelle.
what it's all at the end of the day, it's about freedom.
Yes.
Freedom to love,
Yes.
freedom to everything. And so that's for me what it's doing the work.
Yes.
The payoff is freedom.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Agreed. Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you,
I
guys.
really have appreciated this conversation.